All right, I'm going to tell you why I am gluten-free and why I am mostly processed and refined sugar-free. Now, I say mostly because I still have processed or refined sugar every once in a while. It's just done in a much more judicial way, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I always want to talk about gluten because I think this is the one that people really struggle with the most with giving this up. And I understand it's because gluten or wheat is in everything. Sorry about that noise. That's my dog murdering a stick. Anyways, I know people struggle with the idea of giving up gluten the most, but I think once you understand why I gave it up, it'll make more sense and it might be easier for you to wrap your head around it, and maybe you'll decide to do the same thing. It's totally up to you. I just wanted to give you my whys. Okay, gluten is one of those things that so many of us, like really most of us, are sensitive to it in some way. Meaning we're sensitive to it, like we're having an allergic reaction or like our bodies aren't responding great to it. But that is happening to most of us in some way. And I believe this is because wheat has been genetically modified so much, so rapidly, and so often that our bodies are not evolving fast enough to be able to keep up with all these modifications, all the GMOs. So because of this, our bodies are like, what is going on? Like, what is this weird new substance that you're giving to me? So then we have these sensitivities or these allergies, right? Or these reactions in different ways. Even if it's the tiniest amount, this sensitivity can cause inflammation in some form in your body, and that affects everything from your brain to your joints to your stomach, everything. And when you have this inflammation, it results in headaches, sometimes migraines, brain fog, swelling, decreased cognition, meaning your brain isn't functioning as well, you're not functioning as well. Depression, digestive issues. Some people have diarrhea, some people have constipation, some people just have stomach pain. It can even result in malabsorption, so your body isn't absorbing nutrients as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. It can even cause overeating. The sensitivity can create overeating in your body. Like what? So this list is pretty extensive. It keeps going. I'm just giving you some of the ones that were like, big ones for me. Okay, so back to the malabsorption thing. So gluten is a really sticky substance. It's in so many food products these days because it helps bind things together. It's the thing that helps make our loaves of bread and our muffins and our cupcakes stand up and just be beautiful, right? And like these lovely, airy things. Our croissants, our pastries, like all so deliciously beautiful. And because it's sticky, it's also in a lot of other packaged foods. Because again, it helps hold everything together and it's a great filler. So a lot of frozen meals, a lot of packaged meals, it's even snuck into things like ketchup, granola, French fries, and chips. Like, why do we need gluten in those things? But again, it's a binder. It helps things stay together better. So it's really useful in making our food look more appealing. But the problem is that the sticky substance can affect your gut, meaning your stomach. Because it's sticky, it can affect the breakdown and the absorption of your nutrients. And that can cause us stomach discomfort, like cramps, bloating, constipation, nausea, and even diarrhea. So those are my big reasons. It's because our body does not know what to do with it, so it's seen as this foreign substance and our body is having a reaction to it. And again, because it's being modified so often, our body just can't keep up. Now, if you went somewhere like Europe where they don't have the genetically modified foods, you could probably eat bread there and be fine. But here, because we've modified it so often, it's like we just can't keep up. So our body's constantly like this shock, like, what's happening? So it's funny, my husband and I actually did this challenge. It was called the 75 Hard Challenge. You might have heard of it. And we stopped eating gluten because you had to choose a diet. Now, we're not much of dieters, so we decided just to remove two things that we knew were kind of negatively affecting us. So my husband, Nate, he chose to remove gluten, and I chose to remove processed or refined sugar. Now, while I was doing that challenge, I happened to pick up the book Grain Brain. Now, if you haven't read that book or you haven't heard of it, he talks exclusively about getting rid of gluten from your diet. He's a huge proponent of that. So it's a great read. He's got great recipes in it. I use some of his recipes in the Foodlit. So he's a great resource, and it just blows your mind. It blew my mind. So definitely check it out. Anyways, so I happened to be reading that book as we're doing the 75 Hard Challenge. And as I was reading it, I was like, what? So it really helped me be super solid in not doing gluten, even after the challenge was over. But anyways, funny story, it turns out my husband is actually gluten sensitive. I am as well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but he actually has physical reactions. His stomach, actually he gets discomfort. I've noticed he can't eat foods that are on like the extremes, like spicy or sweet. He can't eat those, it just completely ruins his gut. Now that he's been off gluten for months, I think like 6 months, he can now eat those things, no problem. Like spicy foods, sweet foods, totally fine. Another thing that he has is that he feels like he's bloated. He always calls it fat cheeks, but he's like, whenever I eat bread, I can always just like feel it in my face, which always cracks me up. But he actually was hanging on to extra weight. Since he's stopped gluten, he's lost about 15 pounds, and I mean, he eats a lot and he really is not able to gain it back. Lucky guy, right? Anyways, he also has skin issues from gluten, which shows me that his body was trying to detox the gluten. Every time he would eat it, he would get a rash on his body. But this really makes sense because his mom is actually also gluten sensitive. So apparently it's hereditary. So for me, I've noticed that my arthritis in my hands is actually better and my seasonal allergies aren't as intense. They're still there, but before I would be exhausted, I would have these semi-migraines, I would just be congested all the time. Now I have like a baby version of that. Like I have like slight headaches, I have some congestion, but the lethargy isn't nearly as bad. It's like a baby version of that. I'll take it. I feel much better. And the arthritis, it's funny, in my joints is so much better. Okay. I want to talk about processed or refined sugar because this is also a big one. I want to first just define loosely what the different sugars are. So there's processed or refined sugar, which are white sugar, brown sugar, or raw sugar. Now, maple syrup, agave, honey, those are all dancing on the line between natural sugar and refined sugar. They're really right in the middle. And then there's our natural sugar, the sugar that we get from fruit and vegetables, the things we get from nature. Now, the problem with sugar in any form is that it spikes your blood sugar. But processed or refined sugar spikes your blood sugar the most. Now, if you spike your blood sugar, it also spikes your insulin levels. Now, that's not a problem if it happens every once in a while. But if it happens regularly, this starts to throw off all of your hormones. And then your body gets really good at fat storing. Now, this is the exact opposite of what we want to be happening, right? Especially as we get older. Now, that spike in the insulin level causes your blood sugar to drop, and then we get really tired. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I call it a sugar hangover. You just feel like you are exhausted and everything is so hard. You're just muddling through life. That's how I get anyways. I actually never knew about the sugar hangover until I did that 75 hard challenge because I didn't have any sugar for 75 days. I was completely clean. On day 76, I took my niece out for a donut, and about 30 minutes later, I was like, I have to go take a nap. Like, I'm sorry. We were all on vacation, like the entire family was on vacation, and I had to go take a nap. It's the middle of the day. It was legit like noon. And they all went and did something. When I woke up, I felt the exact same way. I didn't feel any better. I felt hungover. I was like, man, I am so exhausted. And I was like even irritable because it was so hard to do everything. Like talk, walk, move my body. It was bad. And I was like, whoa, major light bulb went off. Like, it's the sugar. Oh my gosh. Like, it's crazy. And from then on, I've been like, oh, it's a sugar hangover. Yeah, totally makes sense. Because before I did the 75 hard challenge, I was eating sugar in the form of cookies or ice cream almost every night. I love sugar. I mean, who doesn't? It's delicious, right? So I was eating that every night, just a little bit, but it was still something every night. And every day I would wake up exhausted. And I never once thought it's the sugar, right? I was like, oh, I must not have slept enough. Must be my allergies. I had all these excuses. And then once I did the 75 hard challenge and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the sugar. What? I was sad because I love sugar. But I now know it's not really worth it to me to feel that crappy. I'd rather not be hungover. So that's what I was saying earlier is I'm really judicial about when I eat sugar. I'd much rather eat natural sugar any day. Okay, so that's my story. I suggest you read Grain Brain if you're not sold on this, or just even read about how gluten affects your body. Again, the processed sugar thing, it's really the biggest thing is that it spikes your blood sugar and it just causes your body to hold on to weight. And the more regularly that you eat sugary things and your blood sugar spikes and then your insulin levels spike, your hormones get thrown off and you're just on fat storage mode. It's not what we want. All right.